Welcome back from that break. We are trying to look at the role of media exposes in curbing corruption in public institutions in Uganda. And Mr. Mlondo, before we went for the break, you were trying to tackle how some of the stories or cases that are exposed, the corruption cases exposed by media, are not. There's no action that is taken upon by the relevant authorities, and this is one of the issues that is challenging to the media because I feel that it keeps on demoralizing most of the journalists who keep on reporting, and nothing is being done by the relevant authorities or the persons who are supposed to take action against those they get those who have been implicated in corruption cases. So, for you as a journalist, what would you advise government? Because if something has been exposed and there's evidence that someone or a public entity or an individual has engaged in corruption, this is causing government to lose a lot of money which would have been used for development of the country. What advice would you give to the authorities that are responsible in terms of effecting an action against some of these individuals?
You know, that is a very good question, but which is very hard to answer because, sometimes maybe to take a regime change for us to see some radical changes. Like I told you what happened in Tanzania. It had to take a regime change for a new president to come in and undertake very radical reforms because um, corruption currently in Uganda has become institutionalized, and the political leadership of our country across the political divide thrives a lot on corruption. So I there are limitations in that regard because you have people who are occupying very powerful positions who are thriving politically because of corruption. You have seen reports of like when there was and when they were changing the constitution to remove the presidential age limit. You know that money was given out to members of parliament. Even after the removal, again more money was given, especially to members of parliament belonging to the ruling party. So corruption has become part of our politics as a country, and it would need a revolution, a paradigm shift that would be caused by maybe change of leadership, or in I usually give this example. I like it. In the kingdom of Uganda, there was a king who did some soul searching, who was very cruel and did some soul searching and repented and changed his ways. He even changed his name from Mukavya to Mutesa. So maybe the other option is for the leaders who are in government, in powerful positions, to do some soul searching and repent and become remorseful and make a commitment to end corruption. Because if they decided and resolved to end corruption, as long as there is political will to fight and end corruption, it would not even take a year before corruption disappears. You can imagine the number of security agencies we have, especially those that do intelligence gathering. Currently, much of their intelligence gathering is actually on political opponents who are competing with them, and maybe others to do with security. But if such resources, if such personnel could be deployed to investigate corruption going on in government entities. It would not even take 2 years for the country to achieve so much progress in both exposing and eliminating corruption that is going on within government. So, political will is very fundamental. But as far as the media is concerned and other players, of course, we've not done much, and our exposures and our work can also greatly help in reducing the level of corruption in the country. When we expose, when we speak out as different stakeholders, as the civil society, as religious leaders, our religious leaders have also not done enough in exposing and fighting corruption. And in many instances, they have also been part of corruption. I am sure you know about this. Many of our religious leaders invite many of these corrupt political leaders at their fundraisings, and they give them colossal sums of money for their construction projects and other projects, and that muzzles them and keeps them, it stops them from speaking out against corruption and exposing it. So there is a lot we can do as the different stakeholders. For the media, we need more capacity building for journalists to be prepared to specifically come up with a number of projects for fighting corruption and exposing it. There can be a fund that can be put in place by government partners. I've seen government partners raising funds for different causes. Government partners can put in place a fund for specifically funding investigative journalism because it's very expensive. And as I told you, many media houses are struggling financially. So if government partners can help us, or even the fund can be put in the national budget, the same way money is given to the IGG, to the Auditor General, to Parliament to carry out a watchdog role, an oversight role, and fight corruption. The media can also be given some money to help in the fight against corruption. We need collaborations also between the civil society, the government partners, the media, parliament, and other players who are involved in fighting corruption to work together to share information, to share experiences and strategies on how to fight corruption. But we also have to find solutions to the issue of commercialization of politics, because commercialization of politics gives us an output of political leaders who are greatly corrupt, who are always looking for deals to get more money. And our voters have also worsened that challenge because they keep pressurizing our political leaders for money. There are so many pressures and demands on these MPs and political leaders, and that compels these people to always look for deals to get money to be able to meet the expectations of their voters. Otherwise, if they don't do so, they are not voted back. The attrition rate, like for members of parliament in the last parliament, was about close to 80% of the members of parliament didn't return. They did go back to parliament. So we need to find solutions to the commercialization of politics. ACFIM has been very passionate about this, has done a lot of research about this subject, and produced a lot of reports with recommendations. I think we need to revisit these reports and the recommendations. One of the recommendations was for an amendment, for amendments in our laws to make voter bribery highly risky and punishable. Like we've seen many members of parliament who have been thrown out of parliament after courts discovered that they bribed with voters. But after they have been thrown out and the by-elections are organized, the same people are allowed to contest. So if we had the law that bars such people from contesting again, that would greatly help. It would greatly help us. But we also need to ensure that civil society organizations and journalists and the other players, including those who are in state agencies that are fighting corruption, they need to be well facilitated, they need to be paid well so that they cannot be compromised by the corrupt. Because I remember when the former Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Olanya, was meeting the new IDD, one of his concerns from the reports he had got was that even the office of the IDD had so many staff who were involved in the corruption, and in the course of investigating the corrupt, they solicit for money and to write good reports about these people and cover up. Same thing happens in the office of the Auditor General, that so many people, staff who are involved in investigating corruption, in demanding for accountability, many times they are compromised and they cover up and they never write reports that expose failure to account for funds. Of course, the solution is not only in ensuring that these people are paid well, but also identifying people with integrity to do that kind of work. Because if you don't have people who are incorruptible given such duties, it becomes very easy to compromise them, even when they are significantly paid well. So that is another thing but of course, that is majorly for the appointing authorities, people who are responsible for recruiting, including the chief executive, who is responsible for appointing the top occupants of those offices, making sure that people who are incorruptible, and we have so many people in this country who are known to be people of high integrity. Those are the people that need to be given those responsibilities of investigating the corrupt who have a tendency to compromise those who are investigating them.
You talked of the issue of political corruption being institutionalized in Uganda, and there are very many. Some people also do believe outside there that the media has also not survived either being captured or co-opted by the regime or the government in power. And some of them don't believe that what media sometimes brings out is a true reflection of what really happens in some of those institutions. They just give us a glimpse and they leave most of the things. What is your say on this argument that media is being co-opted or captured by the regime?
Uh, Co-option is debatable, but like I said in the beginning, I told you there are so many stories that never come out to the public, that are never published, and that is partly because of the interference that happens, that comes from those who are in authority. And because when you say co-opting, it would mean it's a government policy. But what I was talking about is that there are individuals within government. It may not necessarily be a policy of government. And I don't think it's a policy of government because there are so many people in government, including cabinet, even parliament, who are committed to fighting corruption and exposing corruption. But there are individuals within government who are corrupt and who will always make attempts to compromise the media, to compromise managers, to compromise journalists, not to expose corruption that is going on within government. So, like I told you, the limitations are there, but to a bigger extent, the media has played a very fundamental role in fighting corruption and exposing it. And that is why, even when it comes to the rankings internationally, those rankings are based on the reports that come out. So the reason we could be doing badly as a country, as far as the rankings are concerned, is partly because so much corruption going on has been greatly exposed. I should also commend the civil society. The civil society has played a very fundamental role in exposing the corruption that is going on in the country, and that is why it could be one of the reasons why civil society organizations have been getting challenges operating in the country. They have been under so much attack by sections of people within government. That's what I can say on that, Mr. SL.
I know our time is fast spent, but I want you to also, as we conclude, uh, give us your thoughts on how best the media team can team up with civil society to bring bear to pressure on public accountability institutions to play their constitutional role.
That's a very good question, and that's an area, me even as a leader in the media industry, it is something that I have been thinking about, that we have not done enough to ensure that we monitor and follow public finances and ensure that the taxpayers' money is properly managed, properly utilized, and that there is value for money. We keep covering the national budget and indicate that so much has been allocated to these entities, but we've not been following them enough in the course of execution to ensure that public finances are properly utilized. And so, as the media, as civil society, even as parliament and many other stakeholders that are involved in fighting corruption, including development partners, because development partners are very passionate about this subject. I think we need to come up with a number of engagements, discourses to meet together and assess the progress made and come up with new strategies on how to work together and take the fight against corruption to another level. We, I am sure development partners will be willing to fund such initiatives. I told you, as far as the media is concerned, we also need a fund to be put in place to fund, to facilitate journalists who are involved in the investigative stories. Investigative stories are very costly. They take a lot of time and patience to be done, and the bulk of our journalists are freelance journalists. So if someone is not a staff, they do not have that patience to work on such stories. But when there is some facilitation for them to be given some special facilitation to work on such stories, we shall be seeing more stories coming out exposing corruption. So, as a way forward, we certainly need collaborations between the different players, the development partners, the civil society groups, the media, the different state entities that are given the responsibility to fight corruption, the Auditor General, the IGK, accountability committees of parliament have produced so many reports with so many recommendations. There are recommendations that have been made by the Office of the Auditor General, by the IGK. If we could sit down, all of us converge like in a symposium, and we revisit all these recommendations and discuss the way forward, I am sure there are so many new initiatives and projects that we shall come up with that would greatly help us to take the fight against corruption a notch higher. Yes, that's what I can say, Mr. Isaac.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moses Mulondo, and thank you for your time for honoring our invitation to participate in this edition of ACFIM Talks. We have come to our tailor end, and we want to also thank all those outside there who have been listening and watching us. This week's edition has come to an end, and we expect to have more of the discussions around public accountability and political corruption in Uganda next week in another edition. Please keep tuned. It's ACFIM Talks. It runs every Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. East African time. My name is Abel Ethel, and I want to thank you all for keeping in touch and keeping tuned with us.